The ZZZ story was better than I expected. My expectations for gacha game stories has always been low since most gacha stories are subpar compared to actual games. But I really enjoyed the 2.1 story. My favorite part of the story was the dynamics between Alice and Yasuha. Yasuha being a teasing little brat that needs correction, and Alice being a pampered little crybaby. Their relationship at the start was a little rough. Yasuha constantly teasing Alice about being from a prestigious background. At the end of the 2.1 story, their relationship has improved, and as they are basically sisters from other misters. Minato being added to the mix was also a pretty cool dynamic. I really liked how he was like the medium between Alice and Yasuha, and was also putting up with Yasuha's bratty antics. I think these three, Alice, Yasuha, and Minato, got a perfect amount of screen time to see the other side of these characters, witnessing the heroisms of these characters. I know some people had a problem with the Proxy being able to enter the Hollows now. I don't think it's that big of a deal since exploring the Hollows is like a big factor in the ZZZ lore. People enter these Hollows for their own personal gain, and I think it's fundamental for the Proxy to enter the Hollows since it is part of their character growth. I think the Proxy is probably one of the best HoYoverse MCs we've had since Kiana from Honkai Impact 3rd, since the Proxies actually get character growth. Traveler doesn't really get any growth, and the Trailblazer, I mean, they're kind of just like there at this point. The Proxy is way more useful now. Not only do they help with the navigation to the Hollows, but they even help get rid of the miasma. Over time, the Proxy may be able to do other things since they are still in their training arc. I can see them being a buffer for the agents in lore and probably most likely in the gameplay too, similar to FGO, the master using a command seal to buff their servants. Maybe the Proxies will have a similar role, being able to buff their agents in combat. Not to mention, it is nice to see the Proxy interact with the other characters with their own body. I think it's just kind of lame to have Eos there all the time, just interacting with the playable characters. Not that I hate Eos or anything. I think the new Eos role that they have, basically like a hacking tool, is very suitable for them. Not to mention the minigame that ZZZ has introduced throughout the story, that platforming minigame. I think that's actually pretty fucking fun. When I encountered that throughout the story, I was actually pretty excited. I hope they do more of that in the future where, you know, you get to play as Eos, platforming around, maybe have longer levels. So not only is, you know, the Proxy being more useful, but even Eos themselves is also more, you know, fun to play with like that platform minigame. So Eos is not, you know, totally just trashed. You know, at least Eos is still relatively useful. Fairy plays a minor role in the 2.1 story. She basically helps us shut down cameras and hack complex things, helps us receive and remember passwords as well. I know there are some people out there that do wish that Fairy played a bigger role in the story. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, mostly because Fairy, she's basically just an AI voice. She has no physical body. She can't fight monsters. She can't fend off the miasma. She can't really, you know, physically interact with the other characters. She can make like quirky remarks every now and then, but not really that often. I know like in the beginning of ZZZ, she made a lot of quirky remarks, but you know, I don't really know what else they can really do with Fairy. I can see her playing like bigger roles in the future if they ever get her like an artificial body or some robot body. But as of right now, she really can't really do much. I'm not saying she's useless. She is 100% still useful, but at this point she's basically more than just a tool. Maybe one of these days, as I said earlier, she could get like a physical body or something, but as of right now she's basically just there to help us hack complex things and help us remember and retrieve passwords. The Obol Squad makes a return in the 2.1 story. They make a reappearance with the introduction of a new NPC named Isolde. She is basically the colonel of the defense force and is the one leading the Obol Squad. The Obol Squad's roles in this chapter were relatively small, but I figured that they were kind of just here to set up for the 2.1 story. So the Obol Squad will most likely have a much bigger role. They're probably going to be one of the main characters in the 2.2 story. Not to mention Isolde, at the end of the chapter, she basically made a bold statement saying that the battle begins now. So this was basically just a setup for the Obol Squad in the chapter 2.2. So can't wait for that. We also get to meet Seed. We don't get to hear her voice. We do know that Seed is a female that's piloting a big ass mech. I think she is piloting it remotely. She's most likely in a different location, but we finally get to meet the infamous Seed of Obol Squad. The antagonists of the 2.1 story are the Exaltists and the corrupted side of Porcelemix. The Exaltists were a little minor role here. They kind of just showed up and laughed like the delusional people that they are. The Porcelemix played a bigger role as being the antagonist of the story, as their goal was to blow up their factory to get rid of the evidence that Porcelemix was collaborating with the Exaltists, since if word got out that a big corporation was working with a bunch of lunatics, it'd be very bad publicity. Not to mention there was just a very big, powerful Ethereal roaming around the factory, so not only were they trying to get rid of the evidence, but they were also trying to blow that shit up to smithereens. Damien was actually probably one of my personal favorite characters this chapter, since he is a pretty gray character. He only really allies with the protagonists for his own personal gain. Alice basically had to make a business deal with Damien in order to get Damien's cooperation to stop the big baddies from blowing up the factory and also saving Yuzuha, who returned to the Hollow to make a deal with the big baddie of Porcelemix to spare her friends. Our Shifu Yuzhuan played a small but big role in 2.1 story. 90% of the story she had to relocate for her to soothe things out at the Yunkai summit. She basically arrived at the end to help us deal with the big bad Ethereal. Since Yuzhuan is very powerful lore-wise, it makes sense that the writers had her out most of the chapter. If she was with us from the beginning, it would have been a wrap. She would have just one-shotted everything. In conclusion, I thought the 2.1 story was excellent. A lot of the characters got a decent amount of screen time, and I hope 2.2 will also be just as great. Let me know what you guys think about the 2.1 story in the comment section below, and I will see you guys later.
Bye bye now. Come again soon.